And they're tagging me on Facebook and stuff. Hey everyone, it's Trey Yingst, the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. We're currently reporting live now from the Middle East to give you an update on the situation in Iran. If you've tuned into Fox over the past 2 weeks, you've seen our continuing coverage of this developing story. But we have new details to report and a new statement from President Trump about what's happening. So whether you're joining on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or X, you're going to want to hear this latest information. We'll also be able to provide some new information and answer some of your questions as it relates to the ongoing situation across Iran. So to start out here, I'll give you a preview of what we know and what we are reporting today. New reports indicate more than 3,000 people have been killed so far in these anti-government demonstrations. The true number is expected to be far higher, but it's difficult still to confirm information out of Iran due to the fact that there's still an internet blackout ongoing. Last night, we were able to get through to two people who were using Starlink in Iran, one person in Tehran, the capital, and another person in Isfahan, a city to the south of more than 2 million people. We'll get into the details of what we learned there, but I do want to start with what President Trump this hour just released on Truth Social. He said, quote, "Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price." The president goes on to say in his statement, "I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way." The president, again, making a very forceful statement there on Truth Social as he continues to follow the developments on the ground in Iran. To give you a sense of what we are hearing, last night I spoke over the phone with a man who was using a Starlink in the city of Isfahan, and he talked about the live ammunition that is being used against demonstrators. He said it was a battlefield, a war zone, and weapons of war were being used against these protesters. And it's not just there in Isfahan, but in Mashhad, to the east of Tehran, in Tehran, the capital, in Isfahan, in some of the Kurdish areas further west. We have been talking with people across the country, and we hear a similar thing. Many people are being killed, thousands wounded, and thousands arrested. So as we continue to cover this story, we do expect to get more developments on the ground about what's taking place. Overnight, there were some international calls that were able to go through, and people got some pieces of information. But if you have questions about the situation in Iran or about our coverage, put them in the comments below. My team will send them to me, and I will answer some of those questions live here as we report. And I'd encourage you to share this video, whether you're watching on TikTok or on X or on Instagram or on Facebook. Share this video with your followers. Again, my name is Trey Yingst. I'm the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. So the first question we have any protests been able to remain peaceful? Many of the protests were peaceful. They started out peacefully, and when security forces opened fire on demonstrators, they unraveled. And that's been part of the concern here, is that the unrest that we are seeing on the ground as a result of these clashes in the streets will continue to boil over. But amid this crackdown, there's real fear among the demonstrators. I heard from a man in Tehran last night who was very worried about the fact that he could be arrested or even killed as a result of just speaking with the outside world about what's happening on the ground in Iran. And so that, again, is what the president now is encouraging to these demonstrators. He, again, is saying to them, calling them patriots and telling them to take over their institutions. And so it's a very specific statement by President Trump. And remember, this comes on the heels of an indication just over the weekend where the president was on Air Force One, and he talked about the fact that the Iranians wanted to talk. They wanted to meet, and he appeared at that point open to it. But I think the White House and the entire world has seen over the past 48 hours just the amount of people being killed on the ground in the heavy hand that the regime is using against these demonstrators. Now, we should note the regime also had thousands of their own supporters out in the streets yesterday in an organized protest, a show of force, if you will. The next question that we're getting here from the audience is there an updated total number on the people killed? The number that we are reporting right now, according to reports Iranian officials speaking with Western media, is 3,000 people. We are told, though, that that number is likely much higher. But again, it's difficult to confirm exactly how many people have been killed so far, just given the widespread nature of these demonstrations. Iran is a country of more than 90 million people, and you have protests in cities across this country. And so it's hard to confirm in each individual area. But even today, I reviewed some new video that was sent by a source in Western Iran that showed rapid amounts of gunfire toward demonstrators. And again, this just gives you a sense of how dangerous it is for these protesters who are in the streets of Iran. We have another question here from the comments. Are people outside of Iran able to talk to people inside of Iran? When might the blackout end? Yesterday, Iran's foreign minister said that soon the blackout would end for the internet being shut down, but we see that 5 or 6 days in, it remains still shut. And so again, last night there was this window where people from the outside of Iran were able to connect with loved ones over the phone with international calls, but still the internet is not working as of today, making it very difficult to get information out and really get a full grasp of what's happening on the ground. We have just a sliver of what's actually taking place on the ground in Iran. But again, we continue to use our journalism skills to get around these blocks and get as much information out to our audience on Fox News as possible. I would encourage you to tune into Fox News as this story develops. We have a team of experts on the ground in the Middle East, in our bureau in London, in places like New York and Washington, D.C., and of course our anchors across the board that are able to provide analysis and new reporting about the situation. And again, be sure to follow Fox News across platforms and share this video live as we speak right now across, whether you're on TikTok, Instagram, X, or Facebook. Right now, I'm going to take another question. What could be the repercussions over the area in the Middle East? This is a great question because the Iranian regime has a number of proxies in places like Lebanon with the Iran-backed group Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, some of these Iran-backed Iraqi and Syrian Shia militias, and they will be directly impacted by not just the demonstrations, but the strain and the pressure put on the Iranian regime, and of course the economic pressure. Yesterday, President Trump announced that any country that was doing business with Iran and then doing business with the United States would face a 25% tariff. Again, this is an effort to try to put new pressure on the Iranian regime, and it directly impacts their ability to fund these proxy groups around the Middle East. Another question that we have, do people inside of Iran want the U.S. and Israel to intervene and help overthrow the regime? Like any country in the world, the Iranian people are split on what they want. They're a country of more than 90 million people, and so you have many people who are calling on President Trump and calling on the Israelis to get more directly involved. But then you have supporters of Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian or Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei who are saying that they don't want that to happen. They are supportive of the regime. And so like any country, it's a spectrum of people, some supporting, some opposed. And we have seen these dueling demonstrations taking place in the streets, not only of the Iranian capital of Tehran, but a variety of other locations. The next question is, have other world leaders spoke out about these protests? And if so, what have they said? There was an interesting comment today by the German chancellor, and I'm going to pull up the quote. We actually used this during our live report on Fox News. And he spoke directly about the situation in Iran. The German chancellor saying, quote, if a regime can only keep itself in power by force, then it's effectively at an end. I believe we are now seeing the final days and weeks of this regime. In any case, it has no legitimacy through elections in the population. The population is now rising up against this regime, the chancellor said. He concludes by saying, I hope there is a possibility to end this conflict peacefully. Again, that's from the German chancellor, but it's not just the Germans or the Europeans that are watching closely. Of course, the president, as we noted in the remarks that he made on Truth Social, but then also the Israelis, who we know were in a direct conflict with Iran just last year. Remember, in June of last year, we were here on the ground in Tel Aviv as Iranian ballistic missiles were raining down on this city, Israel's second largest city. It was a 12-day war, and the Israelis were striking a variety of targets in Iran. But the Israelis understand that Iran does have the capability with their ballistic missile program to reach major population centers here, and that is why they are watching so closely. Again, my name is Trey Yingst. I'm the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. We are reporting live from the Middle East across Fox's social media platforms. I would encourage you to follow us, to tune into Fox News channel, and continue to share these videos. The next question that we have is, are there immediate American targets in the region that could be affected? We know the answer to this because we have seen Iranian officials over the past 72 hours threaten the Americans, saying that U.S. bases in the regions could be hit as a result of the ongoing tension. And we even heard the Speaker of Iran's parliament directly talk about the possibility of striking U.S. bases or striking Israel. We also heard Iranian lawmakers, some of them chanting death to America, when they had a session in the country's parliament over the weekend. And so if you have any other questions, be sure to put them in the comments below. I'll take a few more questions before we get back to our reporting here in the Middle East. But again, my name is Trey Yingst. I'm the chief foreign correspondent at Fox News. I encourage you to follow all of Fox's social media platforms. You can follow me at Trey Yingst. We continue to cover this story about the situation in Iran. And if you have any other questions about the ongoing protests that are taking place there more than 2 weeks in, be sure to put them in the comments below, and my team will send them to me, and I'll be able to answer them in real time here as we report from the Middle East. But again, to give you a recap, if you're just tuning in, there have been demonstrations against the government in Iran going on for more than 2 weeks. The Iranian regime is cracking down on these protesters in major population centers across Iran, firing live ammunition into the crowds of people. And we know that thousands have been killed so far. It's difficult to get a specific number, just given the internet blackout that remains in Iran. And as we continue to cover this story, we do anticipate we'll be able to get more information, but it continues to trickle out of Iran, just given the crackdown on communication equipment. As these protests continue, we do expect to hear more from the United States and Israel. And again, there is concern that if the United States or Israel decides to strike the Iranian regime in response to this crackdown on protesters, that it could lead to another direct conflict between Israel and Iran like we saw last summer that could include ballistic missile fire at the city that we are standing in right now. And so we continue to cover this story on Fox News Channel as we try to get a better understanding of what's taking place on the ground in Iran. Someone says, what started this specific uprising and why now? This actually started as a demonstration focusing on the central bazaar, the Grand Bazaar in the Iranian capital of Tehran. And it was over the weak currency in Iran and the fact that there are very difficult living conditions for the Iranian people, an economic disaster in many ways. And that has progressed and now broadened to a larger anti-government demonstration that has swept across the country. We're going to take one more question here before we log off and get back to our reporting here from the Middle East. Someone says, will China and Russia back Iran? It's a great question because historically they have agreements when it comes to defense and weapons. Of course, these countries are buying weapons from each other. And we don't know as it relates to the demonstrations on the ground, but we do know that Iranian, Russian, and Chinese officials are in contact. We have seen this sort of collaboration in the past and likely in the future. Again, to wrap up here, we are covering the ongoing demonstrations across Iran that have reached more than 2 weeks. We are continuing to find ways to speak with sources on the ground and bring that information to you, not just here on social media, but of course on Fox News Channel and across our platforms. Again, my name is Trey Yingst. I'm the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. Thanks for tuning in.
don't take up my busy resources for Facebook.
Okay. You can go New York that.
Yeah, right. Been doing Facebook stuff?
They've been pushing it now, yeah. We do lives. I don't know if it'll last forever, but it's happening.
So you just give Mike a live report, kind of?
Yeah, like a talk back.
Jenna to call me back.
It's super chill.
She said if you have to do 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. I didn't even say that you might go shorter. She
Alright.
just did. I'm going to watch the channel to see what's happening.
Okay.
And we have a camera at the scene, and he said it's all only media there. But then he said, wait, something's happening down the block. I'm going over there, so I don't know if that's anything.
At the shooting scene?
Yeah, I don't know if it's anything. And then we have another camera currently right now en route to the federal building. So I said, let us know if it's worth it to move. Oh God, it's freezing. What's the password?
Hello, everyone. I am Matt Finn coming at you live from Minneapolis, where you probably know there is a lot going on. Right now, it is 10 o'clock in the morning local time. This is one of the quieter times of the day because the protests, the demonstrations, the agitation that usually starts kicking up in about the next hour or so. We have cameras all over, and we'll keep you updated. If you have any questions, by the way, feel free to drop them in the comment box and we will try to answer them. So the latest right now, Minnesota and Illinois are suing the Trump administration, arguing in part briefly that the federal government is abusing its power. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey alleges that the federal government is basically taking advantage of a much smaller police department and a much smaller population here in Minneapolis. I think they're using the word invasion, invading this city. Mayor Frey saying sometimes, there's 50 agents arresting one person, and that is just overkill. Well, the Department of Homeland Security has responded saying that the actual invasion took place under the Biden administration. Tom Homan saying this on our air, that for years and years, you saw illegal migrants, illegal aliens crossing into the United States, and that was the invasion that led to all this, and that immigration agents wouldn't have to be on the ground here in Minneapolis if Minnesota cooperated with the federal government, in part at least honoring the detainers. The federal government is looking for, I believe, upwards of 1,300 criminal illegal aliens here in Minnesota. They're asking for Tim Walz, the governor, and the mayor, Jacob Frey, to honor those detainers. Some of those illegal aliens are really, really bad actors. And so far, no response from Governor Tim Walz or Mayor Jacob Frey on those 1,300 wanted criminal illegal aliens. So Minneapolis and Minnesota saying the agents are overkill. We don't want you here. Of course, Mayor Frey saying get the F out. The Trump administration saying most of this wouldn't even have to be happening if you guys were, at minimum, honoring the detainers. Now, I covered the border for about 2 years straight in Texas, in Arizona, in New Mexico, in California. I personally witnessed probably tens of thousands of migrants illegally cross into the United States. So I bear witness to what Tom Homan is referring to as far as so many people crossing into the United States. And when I would talk to people at the border, they'd say they're coming to places all over the United States. They'd say they're coming to Minneapolis, they're coming to Chicago, they're coming to Pennsylvania, New York, and beyond. So we are witnessing in real time people who did cross the border legally under the Biden administration and previous administrations. Also today, lots of new video in from the agitators. Last night, agitators and protesters launched dangerous, perhaps lethal fireworks at federal agents, and the agents responded, rushed those agitators, took them to the ground, and then took them into custody. Fireworks it seems like it's becoming a thing now. A man was just arrested in New Mexico recently, I believe, a former member of the military, for trying to use fireworks against law enforcement during the No Kings rally in Los Angeles. And so it seems like people realize they can purchase these things over the counter in some places, or, through some back channels, and launch them, and cause a lot of harm. Somebody's asking, what is the sentiment on the lawsuit? Do residents agree? The lawsuits are pretty fresh. So as we talk to residents, we will update you on the sentiments from residents. I mean, of course, you can imagine that people are anti-ICE and are against immigration enforcement here would surely agree with those lawsuits. And, the thing is, I have to wonder sometimes, and maybe you guys can answer this, do you get overwhelmed by all the lawsuits going on? I covered the riots and the protests and the immigration raids in Los Angeles. It was one lawsuit after another, back and forth, back and forth. Then there was the lawsuits over the National Guard in places like Portland and places like California. Just wondering, are you guys able to keep track of all the lawsuits going back and forth between the federal government, or do you kind of get overwhelmed by them? Sometimes it really is hard to keep a tally on how many pending lawsuits there are, but it seems like that's kind of par for the course now. This is what happens. The Trump administration identifies a place, whether it's Los Angeles, Chicago, Minneapolis, New Orleans. They show up, they do their immigration enforcements, the raids, and then the lawsuits hit, right? So there's this constant battle between state and federal powers, state and local authorities. Now, I did a ride along with Border Patrol. We saw a really lot of intense moments, and I point blank asked the Border Patrol agent I was with, hey, if the mayor here is telling you to get the F out, if there's all this sentiment asking for you guys to get out, will that ever deter you? Border Patrol says no. We're not going to stop until our mission is complete. So the firsthand experience I get with Border Patrol agents and ICE is they are not deterred by all of the backlash you're seeing. They're not deterred by all the agitation and the protest. Sure, does it weigh on them? Are they being physically assaulted at times? Yes. But in general, almost every single law enforcement official I talk to, whether it's federal or state, they will tell you, we are going to carry on with the mission. We are abiding by the law. We are enforcing the law. And if you want to see that change, you have the power of the vote, whether it's here in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Chicago, and beyond. But until the law changes, these federal immigration officers are simply carrying out the law, which is something a lot of people don't like to see. And it is rough to see sometimes a person being dramatically detained or taken into custody. It is hard to see that. It's very jarring. And so you can perhaps understand why some people who are not familiar with those situations or don't regularly see them are very outraged. But the backdrop to that is a lot of times it is simply a federal officer carrying out the law. If you guys have any more questions, have protesters continued to track ICE and law enforcement? Absolutely. In fact, I can report that there is a well-oiled, intense, well-organized anti-ICE network here in Minneapolis. It is deeply embedded in a lot of the neighborhoods. When I was with Border Patrol, when they got out of the car, especially if they questioned or detained someone, you're talking a matter of seconds or minutes until someone showed up with the whistles, those ear-piercing whistles. Those start going off. People start screaming. People start beeping their horns. And in a matter of seconds, there's this huge eruption of noise. It echoes, through the streets. And the anti-ICE activists are doing that to alert everyone within earshot where the agents are. And so then immediately people start responding. So they're protesters and activists are absolutely tracking ICE activity. If not, as soon as they see it, they flag it and they try to make as much attention as possible. And we have a lot of video. It's been airing on Fox News all day. We'll continue to air it of agitators throwing snowballs, throwing water bottles at federal officers, not complying with commands to get back. So then what happens? The federal officers use tear gas. They use other crowd control tactics. There's a huge clash. That makes it onto the internet. That makes a lot of video, and then that's what people see. So definitely anti-ICE activity here in Minneapolis. I also saw that in Los Angeles very quickly. In fact, in Los Angeles, a lot of the the mom and pop stands, whether it's a taco stand, a fruit stand, what have you, they would serve as scouts as well. So sometimes, this is what Border Patrol tells me, when they go and apprehend some people operating those stands or operating something innocent looking on the street, sometimes those people are undercover eyes and ears for the anti-ICE networks. Another question, how many protesters have been arrested? Sometimes it's hard to get a daily figure on this. We do ask Minneapolis police. There was on Friday night here in Minneapolis a large anti-ICE demonstration where protesters surrounded a hotel where they believed ICE was staying. That night, and they broke into the hotel. Thank God they didn't get into the lobby or into the floors. But that night, roughly 30 people were arrested, according to Minneapolis police. Now, the federal government says under this specific operation, they have arrested more than 1,500 people who they classify as illegal aliens or illegal immigrants since all this started here in Minneapolis. And I'm guessing that number has grown. But we will certainly keep giving you the update on how many protesters have been arrested and how many people the federal government says it identifies as illegal or criminal aliens that it has arrested. So that is the latest from Minneapolis. The day really is beginning now for the agitators and the protesters and the demonstrators. It's 10 o'clock local here. So about this time or the next hour or two, things start to usually pick up. And then usually afternoon and then evening, that's when things have been turning a bit sour, where the clashes begin. Tomorrow will be 1 week since Renee Good was shot and killed here in the city. The demonstrations are not slowing down. The federal government not slowing down either, sending in up to 1,000 additional agents here, bringing the total to roughly 3,000 agents. So Department of Homeland Security sharply placing its focus right now on the Twin Cities. Of course, the backdrop to all of this is the ongoing fraud here. And Border Patrol tells me that the more immigration agents that are on the ground, the boots on the ground here to tackle the immigration enforcement, that frees up the federal investigators, that frees up HSI investigators to look into all the fraud. You can expect there will be some pretty big updates there in the coming days and weeks. So I'm getting ready to go on Harris Faulkner, although I understand we may be taking some live video or some live press availabilities right now, but we're getting ready to go back on the Fox News channel, and we'll be live here in Minneapolis for many more days to come. So keep tuned in to Fox News on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and of course the Fox News channel. I'm Matt Finn in Minneapolis. Thank you for watching this Facebook Live. Have a great day.